Having a parent who's self-absorbed versus being narcissistic, or having a good friend who's self-absorbed versus being narcissistic are two similar things, but there are some differences. I want to explore that in today's Ask a Shrink. Hang on. So we hear a lot about narcissists today. Narcissistic parents, narcissistic political leaders, narcissistic friends. Maybe you have them in your life. And I've done quite a few videos on toxic parents, and quite often part of the reason for the toxicity is that it stems from some form of narcissism. But then that's a little bit different from being self-absorbed, and I'm sure most of you know what that term means. You see someone very focused on themselves, their needs, their wants. They make everything be about them to some degree. Well, let's be real here. We're all self-absorbed to some degree, right? We need to survive in the world. So having some degree of that is important. We need to count. If we don't take care of ourselves first, let's say emotionally, and are continually focused on others, then we're going to pay a price for that. So we do need to include ourselves and make ourselves be a priority, of course. With narcissists, their ego, their complete sense of self, their personality, in fact, that's why it's called narcissistic personality disorder, because it encompasses everything about them. They have to come first. They have to be the center of attention. They have to win, so to speak. And if they don't, then it invalidates who they are. Now, they're not going to show that, but it's a crushing blow because how they see themselves in the world is how others view them. That's why they're so empty inside. There's nothing really going on here because it's all based on how people perceive them. That's how they live and breathe. It's so important to them. And that's why they're so good at competition and trying in any way they can to outdo somebody else because it affects who they think they are. And when you're basing your self-esteem and self-worth on something external, then you really have to protect that, right? Because if the balloon has popped, so to speak, you don't want to see what's inside because that's extremely painful for them when they do get a glimpse because there's nothing much there at all. There's nothing of substance. Now, for a self-absorbed person, they may also want to put themselves first quite often, but their sense of self, their ego strength, self-esteem is not necessarily based on having to be first. A self-absorbed person may be doing it just because, well, maybe they were just the center of attention when they were growing up. Maybe they were the only child. They had a lot of lavish attention heaped on them. They were somehow treated special. So that happens more from what happened to them externally in their childhood. We could also call that being spoiled. And that's different from a narcissist where that's a part of who they are no matter how they were raised. It's understanding others' feelings. Now, so the ability to step into someone's shoes symbolically and sort of know their world to a degree, to be able to empathize with them, to have empathy, to know that the grander scheme includes lots of people's views and opinions. It's not just all about you. Well, a narcissist is not really going to be able to grasp what I just said right there. They're not really able in any fundamental way to genuinely understand another person's point of view or another person's feelings. Whereas a self-absorbed person may act like they don't want to know somebody else's feelings or their feelings are more important. But if push comes to shove, perhaps with a good friend or a husband or wife, somebody they really care about, they'll get it. They'll be willing to change, and they can change in order to perhaps not lose that friendship or not lose that marriage. So they're capable of that. They may not go there very often, but they have the capability. Now with a narcissist, they really don't have the capability. And so if you find that they do give up the battle in a fight or an argument, or they do surrender about something, it's usually not because they actually get it or they're doing it to be helpful or they're empathizing with the other person. It's because on some level they want to score points in either the situation or with the other person. So if they think it's a means to an end, if it's going to get them somewhere that they want to get to, if it's somehow going to help them in the long run, then they'll do it to score points. So do you see the difference between those two things? It's a very definite difference. So this is a fine line, but it's important to talk about it and to be able to distinguish between the two. And that's especially if you're dating somebody and you're starting to fall in love, but you're noticing these red flags and you're wanting to know, am I taking too much of a risk here? Or maybe you have a good friend who's getting on your last nerve and you're thinking of ending the friendship. Well, if they're just self-absorbed, you have a chance of working it out with them. If you bare your soul, talk from your heart, explain what's hurtful, usually somebody who's self-absorbed will be able to get that and may even make all the changes you need in order for them to keep the friendship or to keep the dating scenario or to keep the marriage or whatever. Whereas somebody who's narcissistic, you're not going to have much luck. They have a pumped up, center of the world view of themselves. Now, so with that said, what's the difference between being self-absorbed and being a narcissist? Well, one huge difference is about their listening skills. Self-absorbed people are usually able to actually hear somebody out. They're genuinely curious. Whereas a narcissist is not really capable of doing that. Somehow they're going to tie it all around into them. They're hearing another person talk to them, but they're already jumping ahead with what they want to have as their comeback, or how they can turn it around and make it be about them. Or they have a better story than what that person is talking about. Self-absorbed people, yes, make it all about them, but may not necessarily break social norms, even break the law, completely disregard how others view them, the way a narcissist would be able to do and typically does. So if you have questions about the difference, please leave them in the comments below. If you like these kind of mental health videos, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.